What happens when one of music's most legendary divas sits down with America's most beloved weatherman, and everything goes completely sideways? This morning's Today Show interview between Al Roker and the incomparable Chaka started warm and conversational, but turned explosive within minutes. It began innocently enough. Al, fresh off his weather segment, greeted Chaka with his trademark smile. Dressed in a flowing purple caftan, curls perfectly styled, the 10-time Grammy winner looked every bit the queen of funk. She was there to promote her new memoir, a candid, unflinching reflection on her life, fame, and the industry that shaped her. For the first few minutes, everything moved smoothly. Al asked about her childhood in Chicago, her early days with Rufus, and the stories behind the book. Chaka responded with warmth and humor, sharing anecdotes from her rise to fame and the struggles she faced as a black woman in the 1970s music world. Then the tone shifted. "Your memoir doesn't shy away from the hard stuff," Al said, leaning in. "You write about addiction, family struggles, but also about your battles with the music industry. You're very critical of how labels treated artists of color, especially during your peak years." Chaka's eyes sharpened. "Critical? I'm honest. The exploitation was systemic, deliberate. They made millions off our talent and left us with pennies. I watched brilliant artists destroyed by contracts that were nothing short of modern-day slavery." The room stiffened. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances. Al adjusted in his chair. "Slavery is a very strong comparison," he said carefully. "It's the truth," Chaka shot back, her voice rising. "When you sign away your publishing rights for scraps, when you're forced to record songs you hate, when you have zero control over your own artistry, what would you call it?" Al lifted his hands in a calming gesture. "I understand the frustration, but don't you think comparing unfair contracts to slavery might be a bit extreme?" The temperature in Studio 1A seemed to drop. Chaka repeated the word extreme, slowly, deliberately, fixing Al with a stare that stopped him cold. "Al, with all due respect, you've spent your career on networks that celebrated you. You've never had your culture stolen, your royalties manipulated, your art stripped for profit. So tell me, who exactly is it too extreme for? You? Or the people who've been exploited their whole lives?" Al blinked, rattled. Chaka continued, "Or is it just too extreme for your comfortable morning show audience who don't want to hear how their favorite music actually gets made?" The studio fell silent, cameras humming. Al's smile faltered. He glanced toward the producers behind the glass. They gestured frantically for him to move on. "I think we're getting a bit off track," he said finally, his voice tight. "Let's talk about your new music. You've been working with some younger artists lately." "Don't you dare try to change the subject," Chaka cut in, jabbing a finger in the air. "You opened this door when you questioned my words. What's appropriate is acknowledging that the music industry has a long, ugly history of exploiting black artists. Pretending otherwise is willful ignorance." Al's composure cracked. "Look, I respect your perspective, but this is a morning show. People tune in for uplifting content, not lectures about systemic oppression in the entertainment industry." "Lectures?" Chaka's voice boomed. "You think me speaking truth about my life is lecturing? That's the problem, Al. The moment a black woman gets passionate about injustice, suddenly we're angry and it's too much." "That's not what I meant," Al protested, though his voice wavered. "Then what did you mean?" Chaka leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Because it sounds like you're more concerned with keeping your audience comfortable than actually hearing what I have to say." Al's face flushed. His genial persona evaporated. "Chaka, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I know how to conduct a respectful conversation." "Do you?" she snapped. "Because right now, it feels like you're policing my language, toning down my message to make it palatable for your viewers. That's not respect. That's control." The producers were practically waving flags behind the cameras, but the two were locked in. "I'm not trying to control anything," Al said sharply. "I'm trying to have a productive discussion. But when you come on here, making inflammatory comparisons and accusations, it makes meaningful dialogue difficult." "Inflammatory?" Chaka laughed, a hard, cutting sound. "The truth is inflammatory to you? The fact that I lost millions because some executive decided my music belonged to him? That I had to pay royalties to perform songs I wrote? That's inflammatory?" "That's not what I said," Al countered, voice strained. "I'm talking about how you're saying it. There's a difference between sharing your story and making sweeping generalizations about the entire industry." Chaka shook her head. "Sweeping generalizations? Do you know how many of my peers from the 70s and 80s are living in poverty? How many died broke while the labels that robbed them are still raking in millions? This isn't a generalization, Al. It's a pattern." Coming on national television and making these kinds of sweeping statements without nuance, without context, it's irresponsible. The word landed like a grenade. Irresponsible. Crew members froze mid-movement. A few instinctively stepped back as the tension in Studio 1A shifted from uncomfortable to combustible. Chaka's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a deadly calm. "Irresponsible? You want to talk about irresponsible?" Her voice cut through the studio like a blade. "What's irresponsible is sitting in your cushioned chair with your cushioned salary, telling a woman who's lived decades of exploitation that speaking her truth is somehow out of line." Al's protest came fast, defensive. "That's not fair. You don't know what I've been through, what I've faced in this industry." "You're right," Chaka snapped, her tone razor-sharp. "I don't know your story, but I do know this. You've never had an executive tell you your natural hair isn't marketable. You've never watched someone else get rich off a song you bled for. You've never been told to smile more, be grateful, tone down your anger at injustice just to keep your seat at the table." Al's jaw tightened. His voice dropped into something darker. "And you think that because I'm successful now, I haven't faced discrimination? You think I haven't had to fight for respect? I've dealt with racist attacks, death threats, harassment. Don't you dare tell me I don't know struggle." "Then you should understand better than anyone," Chaka fired back instantly, leaning forward. "You should understand why it matters to speak truth to power. And yet here you are doing their work for them, trying to quiet me down." "I'm not silencing anyone," Al snapped, his own composure unraveling. "But there's a time and place, and a morning show interview about your memoir might not be the right venue for a political manifesto." Chaka laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "A political manifesto? Sharing my own life experiences is now a political manifesto? This is exactly what I mean, Al. The moment we start telling uncomfortable truths, suddenly we're too political, too inappropriate, too much." The tension was suffocating. Camera operators glanced nervously at the producers. No one knew whether to cut to commercial or let the fire burn. "Look," Al said, dragging a hand down his face, frustration etched into every line. "I came into this interview wanting to celebrate you, your career, your book, your music. Instead, we're in a shouting match about industry politics that our viewers didn't sign up for." "Our viewers," Chaka repeated, the disdain in her voice unmistakable. "No, Al, your viewers, the ones you bend over backwards to protect from reality. God forbid they choke on their morning coffee hearing something more challenging than a weather forecast." A flush crept up Al's neck, anger finally breaking through his usual calm. "That's completely unfair, and you know it. The Today Show covers serious issues all the time. We've done countless segments on social justice, inequality, systemic problems." "Safe segments," Chaka cut in, her voice low and lethal. "Sanitized segments. Stories so polished they don't risk making anyone uncomfortable. That's not truth-telling, Al. That's packaging reality into something you can sell between ad breaks. She stepped closer, her words slicing through the air. Segments where you control the narrative, where nothing gets too uncomfortable for your audience. But when someone like me sits here and speaks the raw, unfiltered truth about what it's really like, suddenly, I'm inappropriate. Al's composure cracked. Raw truth? Fine. The raw truth is you came here to promote a book, and instead, you've turned this into a personal attack on me and this show. You've made assumptions about my character, my integrity, my understanding of discrimination. Chaka shot to her feet so quickly, her chair screeched across the floor. You're damn right I'm angry, Al. I'm angry that after 50 years in this business, I still have to justify my right to speak about my own life. I'm angry that even now, after everything I've accomplished, I'm told to tone it down. Calm it down. Be more reasonable. Al rose too, height giving him a brief advantage, but Chaka's presence consumed the room. Nobody is telling you to calm down, he said, voice rising. But if you can't have a civil conversation without turning everything into a confrontation, maybe television interviews aren't the right platform for you. The silence that followed was brutal. Every crew member froze, eyes darting between them. Chaka whispered, dangerous, and shaking with fury. Television interviews aren't the right platform for me. She took a step toward him. Let me tell you something, Al Roker. I've been doing television interviews since before you even knew what a weather map was. I've sat across from Johnny Carson, from Oprah, and not one of them, not a single one, ever had the audacity to tell me what stage I belong on. Al realized he'd crossed a line, but pride held him in place. That's not what I meant, and you know it. I'm talking about having a productive conversation versus creating controversy for the sake of controversy. For the sake of controversy? Chaka erupted. You think I'm performing outrage for fun? You think I enjoy defending my right to speak about my own life? This isn't entertainment for me, Al. This is my reality. Decades of pain and frustration you brushed off as inappropriate for your morning coffee crowd. Behind the cameras, producers waved desperately for a cut, but no one dared stop the moment. It was too raw, too real. I never dismissed your pain, Al said, though his voice wavered. I'm just trying to understand why everything has to turn into a battle. Why can't we sit here and talk about your book, your music, your achievements? Because my achievements don't exist in a vacuum, Chaka thundered. My music, my career, my memoir, they're all tied to the struggle. You can't separate the art from the artist's scars, and you sure as hell can't separate my story from the systemic oppression that shaped it. Al threw his hands up, frustration boiling over. Fine, but does every conversation have to be a dissertation on oppression? Can't we celebrate the joy, the success, the positive aspects of your incredible career? Chaka laughed, harsh and bitter. Positive aspects? You want the glossy version, stripped of the truth. That's not celebration, Al. That's erasure. That's asking me to smile for your cameras and pretend decades of exploitation didn't happen. Al took a steady breath, trying to regain control of the interview. Pretend the suffering never happened. That's not what I'm asking, he insisted, his voice now ragged. I'm asking for balance. I'm asking for a conversation that doesn't alienate half our audience before we even get to the good stuff. His words strained as he spoke. There it is, Chaka snapped, stabbing a finger at him, her eyes blazing. That's your real concern? Not my story, not my truth. Not 50 years of surviving and thriving in this business. Your audience, your ratings, your comfort zone. Everything has to pass through the filter of what Al Roker and his morning show crowd can swallow with their coffee. Al's face flushed crimson, anger and embarrassment colliding. You know what? Yes, I do care about our audience. Millions of people trust us to start their day with information and inspiration. Not with angry tirades about how terrible the world is. Angry tirades? Chaka's voice rose to a thunderclap, rattling the air. 50 years of clawing for respect, recognition, and basic human dignity, and you reduce it to an angry tirade. You just proved every damn point I've been making. She tore at her microphone, yanking it free with trembling hands. Each movement was sharp and decisive. You want your comfortable morning show? She seethed. You want your sanitized version of black success? Smiles, hits, and watered-down struggle that won't upset anyone? Fine, you can have it, without me. Chaka, please, Al said, suddenly panicked as the interview spiraled into disaster. Let's just take a breath, find some common ground here. Common ground? She dropped the microphone onto her chair with a crack that echoed through the studio. Her glare cut straight through him. The common ground is gone, Al. It vanished the second you decided my lived experience was too uncomfortable for your viewers. It disappeared the moment you chose image over respect. I do respect you, Al insisted, his voice cracking. I respect your music, your strength, everything you've overcome. Chaka stopped at the edge of the stage, turning back with a look that could cut glass. No, you respect the version of me that fits neatly into your box, the grateful entertainer who smiles, sings the hits, and sprinkles in just enough struggle to make people feel good about progress. The moment I bring the real me, the woman who refuses to sugarcoat truth, you call it inappropriate. That's not fair, Al protested weakly. It's more than fair, she fired back. And the worst part is, you don't even see it. You've been conditioned to expect black women to package our pain, ingratitude, and softness. But when we show up with fire, when we demand to be heard, you can't handle it. The studio fell deathly silent. Cameras kept rolling, the crew frozen, every producer too stunned to intervene. Chaka's voice dropped to ice. So go ahead. Give your audience their comfortable morning. But don't ever book another black artist and expect them to perform for your comfort. Some of us respect ourselves too much for that. With regal poise, she turned and strode toward the exit, every step a declaration. Chaka, wait, Al called out desperately. She didn't flinch. He turned back to the cameras, pale and shaken. We'll be right back, he muttered, his voice hollow. The Queen of Funk was gone, leaving behind a studio in stunned silence, and one broken host who had just learned that some storms can't be forecast, can't be controlled, and sure as hell can't be weathered with a smile. Fry Tews.